Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's session. I'm Audrey, a content analyst with CCW Digital, and today's webinar is called Your AI Playbook, How to Design, Deploy, and Optimize AI Agents at Scale. And I'm joined by a few of my colleagues from Parloa and from IBEX, which I will introduce in a moment. But I did want to just start off with an overview of today's session. So I'll kick things off with some of CCW Digital's recent research that'll hopefully set up the conversation on agentic AI and agentic workflows, and the importance of working with a partner that has the same kind of goals in mind as your firm. And then from there, we'll hear from both of our speakers on the types of projects that they're working on and how it may be relevant for you and your work. And then we'll go into a question and answer portion towards the end of the webinar, where we have a few scripted questions, but we're also happy to address any questions that you send in the chat, which should be on the left-hand side of the console. Feel free to send in questions throughout the session, and we'll get to them at the end if time allows. So just kicking things off, talking about agentic AI, obviously, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the concept, and this has been a huge topic in CX and contact center operations in recent years. 24% of leaders say that sourcing and testing AI solutions is a top priority and spend a significant amount of time on it. Obviously, that kind of points towards a shift from a few years ago where this was sort of like a more ambiguous technology, and now it is really a huge part of operations roles. So as our leaders are spending more time, energy, and capital on these projects, there is even more of an impetus to ensure that they're a perfect fit for your operations and not just the type of product that sounds good on paper but doesn't actually execute on the outcomes that you want for your customers. So we see it as a growing priority. 99%, so almost all leaders are maintaining their investment or increasing their investment in an AI through this year. And I think, these are some things we just want to highlight because while there's a lot of conversation around, you want to stay ahead, you want to catch up, you need to have AI to be competitive in the market. These numbers really do back this up, and it is kind of a critical piece to ensuring that your contact center is competitive in this sort of marketplace where we're all competing on experiences. But at the same time, these are very expensive and kind of intensive projects a lot of the time that can result in overhauling your data infrastructure, can overhaul a lot of your processes. So finding a good fit in both the product and the partnership is just as important as making the decision to explore, pilot, and eventually implement AI. So that's sort of the type of thing we want to talk about today. And before we get into that, I think there's another really important aspect here, which is that the customer experience needs to match the level of investment and the level of priority that we're placing on these things. So across the board, only 26% of customers say that their experiences of the past year have been quick, convenient, and easy. This, along with the majority of customers believing that experiences have gotten worse over the past year, is a pretty negative downtrend in what we're seeing across the board for customers is that these experiences aren't getting better. In fact, a lot of the time they're getting worse as companies fold AI into different aspects of their processes, whether it's customer facing or agentic workflows that aren't fully fleshed out. So obviously that creates a lot of frustration for customers to know that, not only are the improvements that they've been promised aren't happening, but also sometimes these things are even more difficult to work with than reaching a human. And there's a lot of room to grow here, but I think another part that we want to focus on when we talk about agentic workflows is the type of elevated standard of service that customers are beginning to expect. So personalization and sort of like special outcomes are two of the things that we pulled on. So 18% feeling as though their experiences were personalized to their unique tastes, and then 16% feeling as though their customer service experience went above and beyond. Those are really low numbers for what we have been promised have been transformational. We've been promised that AI will be transformational in not only processes and the sort of back end of business, but also just delivering higher quality customer experiences. So as we set up this conversation to think about how agentic AI and agentic workflows can not only decrease inefficiencies and reduce costs on the back end, but also elevate customer experiences and elevate the quality of customer experiences, it's really important to remember that this disparity is what customers are seeing. This disparity between things aren't getting better, they're actually getting worse, but we're also spending a lot more time and money on agentic AI. So Today, we're going to talk about those agentic workflows, like I mentioned. And to start things off, we're going to hear from our speakers. So really happy to introduce our two speakers today. We have Tomas Gier, the head of agent engineering at Parloa, and Eric Garo, the head of digital transformation at IBEX. So I'll hand it over to Tomas now, and he'll take us through some of the details of those workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the transformation of the contact center, and I'll be walking you through our partnership here with IBEX and how we build and deploy agents at Parloa. Okay, so a bit about Parloa and who we are to start. So Parloa has been around since 2018. We are headquartered in Berlin. We also have offices in Munich and New York, and over 350 employees globally. We're trusted by some of the largest logos in the world across industries, and we've raised over $200 million from some of the best investors of the world, including Altimeter, Durable, and General Catalyst. And of course, we have a large and robust partner ecosystem, of which IBEX is a very important part, that helps us build and deploy this across markets, regions, channels, and other verticals. And so that is a bit about Parloa. I want to talk very briefly about our partnership here with IBEX. This is a highly synergistic partnership. We at Parloa bring to bear a lot of things, but some of the notable ones are that we bring a platform that is used to build and deploy voice AI agents, not just across customer service, but across other use cases and functions as well. And so this is what allows us to bring voice AI to customers and to companies across use cases. And IBEX here, and I'll let, of course, Eric chime in and talk a bit more. But IBEX brings scale and customer decades really of experience with CX, integration experience with CRMs, ERPs, and other systems of record, and of course, security, compliance, and operational excellence. And so combined, right, we deliver value at scale. We operationalize AI agents for some of the largest companies in the world, and we do it quickly, and we do it seamlessly. And this is a partnership that ultimately we believe is built to withstand not just today and tomorrow, but really the AI future. So let's talk about where we are today, or rather what the contact center of today looks like. So for a lot of you, right, you will have a CCaaS provider that could be a Genesys, an Avaya, a Cisco, a Five9, or someone else. And you will, of course, have human agents on the other side who pick up the phone and ultimately deal with some of the hardest problems your customers bring to bear. Now, as part of that interaction really and those conversations, those agents then in turn talk to your back office, your systems of record, your Zendesk, your ServiceNow, your Salesforce, and they trigger workflows and they get things done for your customers, right? And the current setup is flawed in a few ways, right? There are a few things that it misses. The first is that nothing is really qualified. When it gets to your human agents, they spend time doing things that could be otherwise automated, right? They're not spending time on high value tasks. The second is that this brings a high cognitive load to bear on your agents, right? They're having to context switch, they're having to switch from one system to another to trigger different workflows, to route calls, again, to do activities that are really low value add for the business and for their time. And of course, this leads to high burnout and turnover. This is a well-recognized issue in the industry, and ultimately, more broadly, leads to a suboptimal customer experience for your callers. And it's not something that any of us want for our businesses. So what does the contact center of tomorrow, or in some cases today, really look like? Well, the difference is that you will still maintain and retain your systems of record, right? In that respect, not much may change, but instead of having human agents sit between your callers and your systems, you will have an agentic platform, and specifically AI agents, right? And so the difference is that your AI agents you can think of as augmentation or an extension, really, of your workforce. And with the right context and tools, they'll handle a lot of the same use cases that your human agents handle today. So that would be routing, authentication, self-service, cancellation, returns, and ultimately a lot more. And there are certain advantages, fairly significant advantages, really, to using an agentic platform, right? And the first is that you can scale your workforce, right? There's a lot of capacity planning and forecasting that goes on with human agents, especially around seasonal businesses like retail. But one of the things an agentic platform gives you is scale. It lets you scale your workforce very seamlessly. And the other advantage is a standardized experience, right? It's not great for leaders when they're hearing that one customer problem was solved in one way, and then the next human agent solved it in a completely different way. We want a standardized and exceptional caller experience for all customers. And then some of the other advantages, right? There are, of course, cost savings associated with AI agents. And it's important to think of them not just as a driver for cost savings, but also really as a driver for revenue. There's increasing appetite. I've been seeing this in the market for agents that can handle things like upsells and cross sells. So we typically associate contact centers and contact agents with being a cost center for a lot of businesses, but increasingly you can begin to think of it as a potential revenue driver, and a revenue driver really handled by AI agents. Okay, let's talk about how you build, right, and deploy these agents in an agentic platform, or at least the way we do it here at Parloa. So the first is that you ultimately define the agent, define and design the agent, the parameters, the prompting, the caller experience, et cetera. And then, of course, there are a number of integrations that typically accompany that, right? So you need to talk to your systems of record, and you typically do that through MCP, middleware, and other mechanisms. Once you've designed and integrated that agent, you really begin to move into the testing phase, or what we call the simulate and evaluation step, right? So this is where you generate synthetic conversations to see what it will look like in production, and where you define your KPIs and your metrics, and you evaluate those synthetic conversations against evals that are important to your business and to your use cases. Once you feel comfortable with that, you move on to the deployment, right? And ultimately scaling it across channels, across use cases, and ultimately with increased call volume. And then the last step is what we call monitor and improve, and sometimes we also call it hypercare. This is where we pay a lot of attention to the agent performance, where we go in, we make some tweaks, some changes to get it to its absolute best. Okay. One of the many ways, and increasingly one of the primary ways for building these agents, consists of using a multi-agent framework. And so why is a multi-agent framework relevant? It's relevant because it helps you tackle the really complex use cases. And the reason it lets you do that is because you assign a supervisor agent that decides and routes callers seamlessly and on the back end to sub-agents that are built specifically for one purpose. So one of the well-known problems and limitations with LLMs in general is that if you give it too much to do, it starts to make mistakes. And so the best way to build around that limitation and ultimately solve for it is with a multi-agent framework, where you have sub-agents that handle one thing and one thing only, and they do that thing better than they would if they were all packed into one agent. So to bring this to life a little bit, by way of an example, you could have one sub-agent handling cancellations, you could have another handling returns, and you can have yet another handling FAQs. And of course, these agents then talk to each other, they route between each other, and you have a supervisor agent that is ultimately orchestrating and coordinating everything. And one of the big concerns and questions we get from not just customers, but also prospects is, how do you make sure this is going to work? And the way to do that is to simulate and evaluate at scale. And so this is where we begin to tease out the edge cases. This is where we begin to suss out the problems and address them before we go to production. And so what does that look like? That really looks like simulating and generating thousands, if not tens of thousands of conversations and pulling out the ones that aren't working. Now, you define the ones that aren't working by first looking at your evals, right? Defining your KPIs, your metrics, and seeing where things are going awry. And then what you do is you prompt against that, or you set up other mechanisms like a guardrail engine or a state machine to make sure that you're getting at these edge cases. And so we simulate the conversations at scale, we evaluate those conversations, and we use an AI evaluator, which is really an LLM that's operating as a judge to get at performance pre-production. And this is how we get to a level of comfort ourselves and also for our customers before going live. Okay, now how do you build a platform for the future, and how do you ensure, right, that you're built to withstand changes in the market? Because this is such a rapidly moving market. Well, the primary way and really the safest way to do that is with a composable platform. So think of that as a Lego kit, right? As building blocks that you can bring in as needed for the agent build. And at Parloa, it consists of 5 pillars. We have a communication platform, and that handles everything related to the audio. So speech to text, text to speech, end-to-end audio, the telephony integration. You also have agent orchestration. So this is where we handle some of the protocols you may have been hearing about: agent-to-agent, model context protocol, and ultimately the orchestration between and among agents, right? If we remember the multi-agent framework I just spoke about. Skills, which you can also think of as tools or integrations, right? This is what talks to all of your systems of record and other ancillary systems. Analytics, right? Agent performance, not just real-time performance, but offline performance. Again, pre-production performance, so simulating and evaluating. And then ultimately, we have an agent builder productivity vertical, right? So we want people, businesses, leaders to be able to come into our platform, to use it, to build agents, right? And so that is what that composable piece consists of. And so all of this together is a platform that can be built one brick and used one brick at a time. To bring this to life, actually, with a very current example, one of the big limitations and product problems right now in the market is that building to a model ultimately doesn't work, because you run into limitations that you can't anticipate. So, for example, some people have seen with the recent release of Claude 4.5 that the model is actually aware of its own context limits, right? And so anyone who's building on that model and has built with certain assumptions in mind will have a really difficult time pivoting their product. And so we do this in a way that's agnostic of models and can move quickly and adapt quickly with the market. So we're not anchored on any specific provider. And ultimately, at the forefront, really, of our product strategy is recognizing that customer experience is multimodal, right? So it's not just voice, it's not just chat, it's also email, it's push to talk, it's click to call, and it's using all the tools and the systems of record that are important to your businesses: Salesforce, SAP, Zendesk, ServiceNow, et cetera, right? And so we're building ultimately not just for one channel, but for all. And we believe fairly strongly here that the agent build, to the extent possible, should never be repeated, right? So the agent you build for voice should ultimately be the exact same agent that you build for chat. They should be recycled. There shouldn't be a difference in the caller or customer experience. And that saves time, it saves money, and it ultimately is better for the customer because they're getting the exact same responses across channels. Okay, I think this is where I hand it off to you, Eric. So I will go ahead and do that, and I'll mute myself here.
It is. Thank you so much, Tomas, and pleasure to meet all of you. I'm going to walk you through a little bit about IBEX and our approach to building meaningful AI solutions, leveraging the Parloa platform. With that being said, we have a few key pillars that really make IBEX who we are. And first and foremost, it's our people. Second, it's tech, and that's leveraging AI or other advanced technologies. And probably the most critical component that I'm going to go deeper on today is our BI and analytics organization that really fuels everything that we do as it relates to building solutions for our clients. So, as I articulated, our BI and Insights organization is absolutely paramount. We believe at IBEX that really understanding your customer journeys is paramount into building any solutions for our clients. Having mapped over 150 customer journeys across various industries for our clients, we bring this to the table right out of the box. So as we get in and we really start to figure out where do you leverage technology, where do you blend technology with live agents, really making sure that these solutions that we're building for our clients hit the entire customer lifecycle and it's seamless throughout, whether you need human support or whether we fully automate that with our AI agents from the Parloa platform. That being said, we have a very holistic journey-based approach with 5 integrated functions that power our full CX lifecycle. Really, as I articulated, either fully automating interactions or handing it off to a human for assistance. I'm going to go a little bit deeper on the upcoming slides about our customer journey mapping and the approach there. But just to touch a little bit on some of the other key functions that we believe are absolutely foundational into deploying successful solutions is quality assurance. We measure our AI agents or any technical solution that we deploy for our clients just like we would a human agent. So we're holding our solutions accountable. We don't believe there should be any degradation from a CX perspective. I'll talk a little bit about how we get there, but you'll see a lot of companies out there that change some of their metrics or KPI. We fundamentally believe that that's wrong, and we should hold our technical solutions as accountable as we would a human. CX design, this is absolutely paramount as we create all of these various journeys to make sure that we're yielding the appropriate outcomes that we've mapped. We have dedicated customer success managers that sit over top of each client engagement that are experts in the industry that client services in. So we absolutely believe that having those expertise and being able to bring what others in the industry to the table is very important. We don't want our clients to just be the best that they can be. We want them to be the best in their particular industry. So you think about the Amexes of the world, right? Just because somebody sits in the utility or the telco space that has historically had relatively poor CX, we don't believe that you shouldn't be pooling information from different industries to build out these solutions to really help them transform. Continuous improvement. I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but this is really all about our BI and Insights team. You don't just hit the deploy button and forget about it. We're continuously evaluating and making sure that these solutions through our data and insights are yielding the appropriate customer outcomes that we expected. As Tomas brought up, our IET integrations. This is core to our BPO business. Every one of our clients we're integrating with multiple systems, anything from your most homegrown system to the most commercialized systems out there. It's absolutely critical that the technical teams have the understanding to integrate, make sure that the data that we're pulling in is clean, because this is a situation where you're building out these AI agents and it truly is garbage in, garbage out. So it's imperative that we do a full cleanse up front. We make sure that all the integrations are solid so you can get those appropriate outcomes. Let's go a little bit deeper into BI and journey mapping. So we have about 750 analysts around the globe that have been supporting our BPO business for decades. About 5 years ago, we really started to transform this organization to say, look, how can we leverage all of the insights across millions and millions of interactions that we support today across the various industries to build out these technical solutions for our clients as we look to transform our business. This is absolutely the most important part as you get in and you start building out these journeys. As I articulated previously, we come to the table with about 150 plus client journeys mapped across multiple industries. So we're not coming in to kind of create that 6-month consulting project so then we can tell you what we can add to your business. We come in with recommendations right out of the gate specific to your industry, and then dive in with you to really understand what are your objectives, where are you in your digital maturation, and how do we really hit the ground running. This gives us the ability to really come out of the gate. Speed is absolutely critical. I think a lot of companies have spent the last 18 to 24 months evaluating AI, right? Is it right for me? It's this scary new technology. Now the board and the market is putting a lot of pressure on how quick can we get these things to market. Our ability to have all of those journeys mapped and all of that data and insights to work with right out of the gate has enabled us to work with our top tiered clients and get deployments in. As you can see here, we have a retail client. We deployed in about 7 weeks, getting really meaningful results. We're seeing about, through the various phases, we typically target about a 15% containment rate within the first phase, and then we progressively go up from there. So it's really important to map out what that whole journey looks like as you work through to get to 15, and then phase 2 you're yielding about 25, and then 35 in phase 3, etc. Again, this is highly dependent upon the client, the industry, and the access to that back-end data, but you can see some of the timelines that we have here to where we're able to add real value to our clients' business through their transformation. This is an example that I wanted to give. We present this to our clients right out of the gate because everybody says, look, AI, what can it actually do to my business? I don't have a whole lot of insights today. We come in with proprietary technology as well as our advanced BI organization, and we do a full analysis for our clients to really understand, as you can see in this Pareto chart to the left, in that top left portion, what's prime for an AI agent? Where can we really be successful, transform the CX experience for our clients, completely shift their cost structure of their business, and fully automate some of those interactions. All the way into those other buckets where you see, we'll map out that full journey and figure out what's the appropriate handoff and what information might you have to pass to a human agent to support those more complex interactions. this is really having meaningful impact for us through those conversations. So a customer really understands, look, I've heard a lot about AI. I've heard success stories. I've heard horror stories. What will this actually mean to my business? So I can go build that business case and gain approval. I always like to give one example on this. Just because you can automate technically doesn't mean that you should from a customer experience or even a business perspective. So if you look at number 4 here, we have discontinue service for this particular client. We fundamentally believe you should not just give those customers a button to where they can discontinue service, right? We have to be really thoughtful. So for this client in particular, we looked at all of their customers and what cohort they fell into from a customer lifetime value perspective. And then we were able to break this down and map out individual journeys. Because look, let's be honest with ourselves, right? Some of those customers that aren't profitable, we may let them exit the business. Others, we want to do everything in our power to save them. So this is the level of insights and analysis that you get when you partner with IBEX as we build out those journeys and really figure out where does it make sense to leverage technology and where might it make sense to use our top-tiered human agents. With that being said, I think I'm going to hand it back to Audrey. She's going to run our Q&A for us.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, we have some scripted questions, but like I said at the beginning, feel free to send in any questions you have about the presentations or anything you want to learn more about. We're also happy to send you more information after. But yeah, just starting from a high level, I would love to hear from your guys' perspective, what does an ideal working relationship between the platform, partner, and customer look like in practice?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one first. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we have a dedicated customer success manager that sits over every one of our engagements. For our clients, we think it is absolutely paramount to have a single point of contact for our clients, right? That really understands the industry, the strategy, and what we're trying to accomplish. So we can hold all the various individuals and functional groups accountable as we build out these solutions. So I would say that's absolutely paramount. Whomever you ultimately decide to partner with, make sure you have one single voice that you can go back to that's going to manage this engagement and make sure you get your desired outcomes.
Yeah, just to add a bit there, my answer was going to be very similar to yours, Eric. The experience should be really seamless, right? No customer should ever feel that they're talking to you or having to deal with 2 organizations. It should really be one person, one face. And then ultimately, as well, that we each bring kind of our spike to bear, right? So on the IBEX side, a lot of what Eric talked about, the integrations, the deep CX experience, and on the Parloa side, a lot of the expertise in the voice and voice AI, which is very hard to get right.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be curious for this next question if you have the same answer or different ones, but when a customer or someone approaches you about looking into AI agents, what is usually their main sticking point or their pain point that they're facing?
Yeah. I'll take this and I'll hand it to Eric. A lot of the times we encourage customers to think of their first AI implementation, particularly in customer experience, to be around partial automation. So this will typically be around things like authentication, right? Answering questions, so FAQ, routing to a department, to a person, and then ultimately classifying their intent, right? These are all things that are high value but low effort to implement, and it gets businesses and leaders very comfortable with AI and the value it can deliver. So that's typically what we see as some of the first use cases, and it's actually where we encourage customers to focus. Eric?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad we're aligned on this. But look, we really just make sure that the foundation is in place because out of the gate, there's a lot of apprehension, right? And you can't, businesses know that this is the future and they know that they have to do something, but you have to take them on a journey and show them those successes. So we really heavily focus on getting the architecture in place and then make sure that we're going through doing the appropriate analysis and showing them where we can get those quick wins so we can really take the whole organization along the way. I will tell you one other thing that I really like to focus on here is making sure there's a very clear message and strategy that we work with our clients on that they can take back to their whole business. You can't do this in a silo. You have to make sure your customers are communicated with and ready to go on this journey, as well as all the employees throughout the business. You can't take a fragmented approach. So I think our approach is very comprehensive and aligned with the folks at Parloa.
Yeah, the fragmented approach might be the answer to this question, but curious if there are any like common misconceptions about implementing agentic AI, or just generally any common misconceptions or qualifiers that maybe let you know whether a firm is ready or maybe isn't ready to take this step.
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think misconceptions is the whole, idea around, oh, AI will hallucinate, it will go crazy. I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure Tomas would agree, if you're properly implementing AI and you map out those customer journeys up front, as I articulated earlier, you can absolutely put the appropriate parameters around it to where AI is successful in your business. So I would say that's a massive misconception. However, that is predicated on the quality of your deployments. Make sure that you pick a partner or call me and go through that detailed customer journey exercise. That's the most critical portion to make sure your deployments are ultimately going to be successful.
Yeah. No, just to echo Eric's point there. So the fear right around hallucinations is that AI is ultimately a probabilistic system, but there are ways to make it near deterministic, and it gets at that deployment quality. And there are various technical and non-technical things we can do, whether it's state engines or prompting techniques, to get it working reliably for enterprises, because we've done this before at this point. Dozens, if not hundreds of times.
And so you both work in very technical fields. I'm sure there's a lot of compliance restraints and red tape and all that. So how do you balance, the technical reality of things with the ambition behind AI and these like big ideas? How do you make them work?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start and then I'll hand it off to Eric. I think the key thing here is making sure that you have the right governance in place, and that means involving your legal and your compliance teams really early. If it's an RFP, right, there's an entire kind of process and set of questions you have to answer. But I think even when there isn't an RFP, just making sure that you've answered every IT set question that could come up before you get started, and that you have a stakeholder or a key person, a single point of contact for those departments, and you keep them abreast of the implementation, right, and the decisions that are being made. And then I think with respect to the compliance and balancing it with technical realities, that making sure that you're not trying to boil the ocean, right, that you're only going after one or two use cases, that these use cases have been scoped, that they've been approved, and nailing that, right, so that you get not just your business stakeholders excited, but also those who think about risk day in and day out.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. The one thing that I'll hit on again that I hit on previously is the phased approach. So really mapping out and understanding the end state vision, right? And then mapping out the various phases and what your desired outcomes are. and then subsequently being able to measure against them. So as you're deploying these various phases, we spend a lot of time at IBEX creating detailed reporting dashboards. So you have all of the detailed reporting and insights that you're measuring each deployment up against. So you're really able to take the client and candidly their whole organization on the walk of, you delivered phase one, here are your results. If anything is out of line because the projects can change, we quickly pivot and then make those changes and iterations, look at the data, look at the insights, and then continue the progress.
I know failure to get IT involved early is probably a big one, but are there any other reasons that you have seen why an AI project would stall or fail before it can really come to fruition?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take this one. What I would say the biggest thing that we've run into thus far with clients is the technical resources that may be on the client side. It's imperative that you get folks that are dedicated and bought into this. They can't do this as a side job. They have to understand it. I will tell you, if you partner with IBEX, that is a very low lift for our clients because we bring the majority of those resources. But it's absolutely imperative that whoever you have engaged with the project is fully engaged. You can't do this as a side job.
Yeah. No, I think I agree wholeheartedly there with Eric.
Awesome. So just moving along, can you think of anything that really matters in an AI agent rollout that some teams might overlook or might not give enough attention to?
Sure, I'll jump in and I'll hand it to Eric. I think it's really one word, and it's testing, right? So the testing for any agentic rollout takes as long, if not longer, than the agent build. And again, this is because we're working with a probabilistic system, and often it's not just an integration, but really a transformation for the business. It's a different way of working. It's an extension and augmentation of your workforce. The same way you spend some time training and onboarding an employee, you effectively need to do the same from a technical perspective for an AI agent. And that's to make sure that you're not just getting at all the happy paths, right? But you're getting at all the edge cases that may come up in a deployment and getting ahead of it really and addressing it proactively before it's out in the wild and in production.
Yeah, completely agree with that. The only other thing that I would add is, look, you're not going to automate, as I said earlier, everything in your business, right? So it's really making sure that your human agent population is as bought into this transformation as the executive leadership team, because as you get these things handed off, you don't want that, oh, AI messed up again, right? You don't want all of those comments coming out. You want them to perceive the AI agents as additional support within their business, their co-worker, that they're also responsible for making sure that they're successful. And you're really looking at this thing as one team and not a fragmented kind of, you got the tech organization here and the human organization here. So really making sure that everybody understands the strategy and we're all working well together.
Thank you. Yeah, just capping off our conversation here, we've covered a lot of different topics today, but for our audience who might want to learn how to apply these concepts, these principles in their own organization, where can they start?
First thing I would say is talk to us. And outside of that is take a hard look at your business, especially your CX, your customer experience, and identify one, maybe two pain points and areas for automation, and really try to automate those first. I would encourage you to bring in specialized partners and vendors, right? Because we have this deployment experience, but also trying to tackle it in-house, right? Standing up maybe a tiger team to to understand and to scope it out before you talk to a specialized vendor is also a way to get started. And then, of course, to produce, to read a lot of the thought leadership and the takes and the how-tos that IBEX produces and Parloa produces would be a good place to kind of wrap your head around how this could work.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add there is don't feel like everything has to be perfect before you get started. Partner with somebody that knows CX and knows deployments and has sound technology like Parloa does. But that's a common thing that I run into is clients, oh, we have all this stuff to clean up or all these bad processes that we have to clean up first. You don't have to do that. Allow a partner and pick a partner that can come help you do that, because you're ultimately going to have to pick those processes apart if you're effectively implementing technology within the business anyway. So don't feel like everything has to be perfect before you start to transform your business.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah, that's pretty much all the time we have today, but thank you both for joining us. And if anyone had sent in a specific question, we'll definitely follow up with you. We'll sidebar about your question, but yeah, thank you all for attending today, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thank you all for attending. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.